Every machine has a weakness. Not the gears, they can be replaced. Not the vaults, they can be rebuilt. Not the trusts or the charters or the shell companies stacked like armor around the money. The weakness is softer than that. It breathes, it sleeps, it gets tired, it gets bored. It falls in love with the wrong person at the wrong time. A dynasty can automate almost everything. The compounding, the protection, the succession of documents signed and sealed and waiting in locked drawers for decades. But it cannot automate the hand on the lever. And every 30 years, without exception, without mercy, without a single missed appointment in 600 years, the engine must do the one thing no machine was ever built to do. It must replace its own operator with someone who has never run it. Consider the greatest fortune America had ever seen. When Cornelius Vanderbilt died in 1877, he left behind more money than the United States Treasury held, $100 million, in a world where a working man earned $1 a day. His son doubled it in less than a decade, and then the machine met the third generation. Palaces on Fifth Avenue, parties that cost more than factories, yachts built to race other yachts. Within 50 years of the Commodore's death, one of his direct descendants died penniless. Within 100, a reunion of Vanderbilt heirs could not produce a single millionaire among them. Understand what did not happen here. The money was not stolen. It was not taxed away. It was not lost in a crash. It was spent by heirs who had inherited everything except the one thing that mattered. The fortune passed down perfectly. The ability to hold it did not. The families that endure saw this trap centuries before the Vanderbilts walked into it. Every culture on earth carries a proverb for it. In England, clogs to clogs in 3 generations. In Japan, rice paddy to rice paddy. In America, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. The collapse was so universal, so mathematically reliable, that the old families stopped treating it as fate and started treating it as an engineering problem. So they built a second machine, quieter than the first, hidden inside schoolrooms and apprenticeships and long silences at dinner tables. A machine that does not make money, a machine that makes the people who can hold it. Because they had learned the one truth that separates a dynasty from a lottery winner. The heir is not born. The heir is forged. This is the machine behind the machine. The process the old families never write down, never advertise, and never explain to outsiders. The deliberate, patient, multi-decade manufacture of a successor. Tonight, the Codex opens its 5th chamber. Tonight, you learn how old money turns a child into a guardian. This is the Heir Forge. The forging begins with a decision that looks, from the outside, like cruelty. The deliberate rationing of comfort. The richest families in Europe sent their sons to boarding schools with cold dormitories, hard beds, and plain food. Not because they could not afford better, precisely because they could. The Wallenbergs of Sweden, a family that has quietly steered slices of an entire nation's economy for 160 years, sent their heirs to serve in the Navy and to work abroad, alone, years before any of them was allowed near the bank. Their motto is carved in Latin, esse non videri, to be and not to be seen. Softness, the old families knew, is the first gift a fortune offers a child, and it is the one gift a forge must refuse. Consider what Meyer Rothschild did with his 5 sons. He did not divide the fortune among them. He divided the map. Frankfurt, Vienna, London, Naples, Paris. 5 boys, 5 capitals, 5 foreign languages, 5 cities that owed them nothing. Each son was sent not to enjoy the family's money, but to build, from a rented office, a bank that did not yet exist. They were not heirs waiting on a will. They were outposts. And here is the detail history keeps missing. The brothers wrote to each other constantly, in code, comparing prices, wars, and kings faster than any government courier in Europe. The apprenticeship was not preparation for the empire. The apprenticeship was the empire. By the time the fortune was ready to be inherited, there was no one left to inherit it. There were only partners. In Japan, the old merchant houses solved the succession problem with a colder instrument. If the bloodline produced no capable heir, they adopted one. Not a child, a grown man, a proven talent, the sharpest clerk in the house, the most disciplined manager in the province, married to a daughter, given the family name and handed the ledgers. They called it Mukoyoshi, the adopted son-in-law, and it is not ancient history. To this day, most adoptions in Japan are not infants. They are adult men, absorbed into family firms that refuse to die. Some of these houses are more than 1,000 years old. One inn by the Sea of Japan has passed through some 46 generations, in part because whenever the blood ran thin, the family chose the name over the bloodline. Blood, the old houses learned, is negotiable. Competence is not. The pattern repeats across every dynasty that survived. The heir works first and inherits later. The son of a shipping fortune spends 3 years loading crates under a foreman who does not know his surname. The daughter of a banking house takes a desk at a rival firm under her mother's maiden name and is promoted twice before anyone learns who she is. The mailroom, the factory floor, the provincial branch nobody wants. To outsiders, it looks like theater, a rich family playing at hardship. It is not theater. It is measurement. The family is quietly collecting the one data set no tutor and no fortune can fake. How the heir behaves when nobody is watching, when the work is beneath them, and when the name on their birth certificate buys them nothing. The fortune watches, and the fortune takes notes. Because here is what the old families understood, and the new ones never do. Money is not the inheritance. Money is the exam. What actually passes from one generation to the next, the only asset that compounds longer than any portfolio, is judgment. The instinct for when to say no, the no's for a bad partner, the patience to let a decade do the work of a decade. And judgment cannot be gifted. It cannot be willed or wired or held in trust. It has to be grown, slowly, repetition by repetition, mistake by mistake, in soil kept deliberately poor. The new rich give their children everything and stand astonished when those children can hold nothing. The old rich give their children almost nothing and then hand over everything decades later to the ones who built anyway. Then come the trials. The first is small, a sum of real money placed in the heir's hands at 22, 25, with real permission to invest it. What the heir is never told is that the family expects them to lose it. Old money budgets for the failure of its children the way engineers budget for stress tests, deliberately, in advance, at a scale the structure can absorb without flinching. The first loss teaches what no classroom can. The feel of a market turning against you, the taste of a decision you cannot take back. The particular silence at the dinner table, after everyone already knows. The loss is not a setback. The loss is tuition. Better a controlled fire at 25 than an inferno at 55 with the entire estate as fuel and no one left alive who remembers how to put it out. The second trial is the silent seat. The heir is admitted at last to the family council, the table where the real decisions are made, and they are given exactly one instruction. Say nothing. Not for a meeting, for a year, sometimes 5. From that silent chair, the heir learns everything the documents refuse to record. How the quiet ant sways the room without ever raising her voice. Which advisor frames every option so that only one survives the framing? Where the real veto lives, and it is never where the organization chart says it lives. Power, the old families know, is a language. It has grammar and idiom and a native accent that cannot be faked. And a language is not learned by speaking. A language is learned by listening, until the day you finally open your mouth and the room hears one of its own. The third trial is the Constitution. Most people do not know the great families have them. Written charters, some of them centuries old, governing everything the law does not reach. Who may spend principal and who may only ever touch income. What a future spouse signs before any engagement is announced. How a member can be exiled from the money without ever being exiled from the table. One French dynasty, hundreds of members strong, requires every adult to buy their own shares in the family holding and to sell them back when they leave, under rules older than most nations' governments. The heir does not simply read the family constitution. The heir is examined on it, clause by clause, like scripture. Because a fortune without rules is just a pile, and the heir's first oath is not to grow the pile. It is to obey the rules that keep it a fortune. Now ask yourself the question the third generation never thinks to ask. If the trusts hold the money, and the council holds the votes, and the Constitution holds the rules, what exactly is left for the heir to hold? Most people stop at the documents. Decoders keep reading. The heir holds the one thing no document can. The reason all of it exists. The founder's hunger. The winter the family nearly lost everything. The story told at every wedding and every funeral, in the same words, for 100 years. Until it stops being a story and becomes a load-bearing wall. Structures hold money. Only memory holds a family. The heir is not the owner of the fortune. The heir is the keeper of the fire. And when that story dies, the engine keeps turning for exactly one more generation. And then it stops. And then one day, usually without ceremony, the handover begins. There is no crown. There is rarely even a meeting. It happens the way winter happens, by degrees. A signature required where a father's used to be. A banker who starts calling the heir first, and the patriarch second. A key, a code, a seat at a closing. The older generation does not step aside. It dissolves, one permission at a time, watching the machine's temperature after every transfer, ready to reach back in at the first shudder. By the time the founder's chair is finally empty, the room barely notices, because the heir has been sitting in it, in every way that matters, for years. The best successions in history all share one trait. No one can say precisely when they happen. And what the heir receives in the end is almost disappointing to outsiders. Not a vault, a roll. Not a fortune, a shift. 30 years at the lever, holding what they did not build, defending what they will not spend, guarding principle they will never touch, for descendants they will never meet. The heir is rich the way a lighthouse keeper is powerful. They command the light, but the light was never for them. This is the secret that makes old money invisible. The individual is temporary and knows it. New money asks what the fortune can do for the person holding it. Old money asks what the person can do for the fortune passing through them. It is not a possession. It was never a possession. It is a procession. This is why 90% of fortunes are gone by the third generation, and why the 10% that survive are not lucky. They are not smarter. They do not find better investments. They run a forge. While new money raises children, old money manufactures successors. Rationed comfort. The working apprenticeship under a borrowed name. The permitted loss. The silent seat. The Constitution learned like scripture. The story carried like fire, the quiet handover, and the 30-year shift. And then the heir turns around, looks at a child bent over a ledger, and begins the process again, exactly as it was done to them. The difference between the families that vanish and the families that endure is almost invisible in the first generation. By the fourth, it is the only difference there is. You have come far through the Codex. You built the architecture, stone by stone. You sealed the vault and learned why the greatest fortunes are the ones no one can see. You followed the inheritance across the bridge of the grave, and you stood inside the engine that never stops. Tonight, you learned the engine's final secret. It was never self-sustaining. Somewhere in every generation, there is a hand on the lever, and the hand must be made. Somewhere tonight in a quiet house, a founder watches a child and begins, without a word, the oldest manufacturing process in the world. Not making a fortune, making the one who can hold it. The Codex will continue. New chambers, new machinery, new doors, and you, decoder, will be here when they open. This was the Heir Forge,